This podcast contains content generated or significantly edited using artificial intelligence tools. All information is provided for general informational purposes only and reflects knowledge available at the time of publication. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. We recommend that listeners verify the information independently and consult with qualified professionals for personalized advice. Welcome to the Luxembourg Fundcast.
Okay, and welcome to the deep dive. Now, this deep dive is really designed specifically for you if you're a legal or finance professional based right here in Luxembourg, navigating that often complex world of UK venture capital investments. Today, we're really getting into the nitty-gritty. The UK corporate approvals. We're talking board and shareholder resolutions, the things that actually make these deals legally happen. Our mission. Well, it's pretty straightforward. We want to equip you with the knowledge you need to draft and implement these UK resolutions effectively. Basically, how to turn the commercial deal into, well, legal reality, drawing from the detailed analysis in our sources.
Exactly. And to start, you really have to get the UK context right. The Companies Act 2006, that's the absolute foundation. We'll cover some key principles there that might feel a bit different if you're mainly coming from a civil law background. What's really interesting, I think, is the balance the UK strikes. You've got, on one hand, quite a bit of flexibility, especially for private companies.
Right.
But then that's paired with some pretty strict procedural compliance, and filing requirements. So this deep dive should really clarify the essentials for you.
Okay, let's dive in. Where do we even begin with the UK framework? What's the absolute must-know from the Companies Act 2006 for a VC deal?
Well, the absolute cornerstone, the thing you really need to grasp first, is the set of duties that directors owe. These are actually codified, written down in the Companies Act, sections 170 to 177. They're fundamental.
Okay, duties. Like what specifically?
So key ones include acting within the company's powers. That's section 171. Then there's the big one, promoting the success of the company for the benefit of its members as a whole, section 172.
And that's quite broad, isn't it?
It really is. It includes considering long-term consequences, employee interests, community impacts, supplier relationships. It's not just short-term profit. Also, exercising independent judgment, section 173.
Makes sense.
Applying reasonable care, skill, and diligence. That's 174. Avoiding conflicts of interest, hugely important, section 175. Not accepting benefits from third parties, section 176. And crucially for deals, declaring any personal interest in a proposed transaction, that's section 177. And a really critical point here, these duties are owed to the company itself. Not, directly to individual shareholders or shareholder groups. That focus on the corporate entity might be a subtle difference from some civil law perspectives.
Okay, I see. And why is this so critical for a VC investment context?
Well, think about it. When directors in a UK company are approving an investment, they have to genuinely believe it promotes the company's success. That's 172. They must manage any conflicts of interest they might have, following 175 and 177. And they need to show they've exercised reasonable care and skill, 174, in actually evaluating the deal terms, understanding the implications, due diligence, basically.
And here's something that always catches my attention. Even if the shareholders approve the deal, say, overwhelmingly, that doesn't let the directors off the hook personally, does it?
Correct. Absolutely not. Shareholder approval is necessary for certain things, but it doesn't override the director's personal duties. They still have to satisfy themselves independently.
So the paperwork matters.
Hugely. The board minutes, especially, need to clearly show that the directors properly considered the deal, asked questions, discussed the pros and cons. It demonstrates they fulfilled their duties. That documentation is vital. It's your evidence trail.
Okay, so directors have these duties. What about shareholder power then? How do they exert control?
Shareholders primarily exercise power through voting on resolutions. The Companies Act, or the company's own Articles of Association, reserves certain key decisions for them. That's how formal control is exercised, especially when it comes to big changes, or indeed, ensuring the investor rights negotiated in the deal are embedded post-investment.
All right, so decisions get made, either by the board or the shareholders. How are these actually recorded? What types of resolutions are we talking about?
Good question. There are two main types. Board resolutions, which are decisions made by the directors, and shareholder resolutions, made by the members or owners of the company. Let's take board resolutions first. These are for the directors to decide on company actions, day-to-day management, but also approving major contracts like an investment agreement. The rules for how they do this are mostly in the company's articles, things like notice for meetings, quorum, voting. A key flexibility, especially for private companies, is that their articles usually allow decisions either by a majority vote at a properly held meeting, or often more practically, by written resolution signed by all directors. The Act, Section 248, requires minutes of all board decisions to be kept for at least 10 years.
And following those procedures, notice, quorum, managing conflicts, minuting, that's crucial.
Absolutely non-negotiable.
Yeah.
It's not just paperwork. It shows the directors are acting properly, fulfilling that duty of care and diligence under Section 174.
Got it. The internal sign-offs, but with real teeth. Essential for the audit trail.
Exactly. Then you have shareholder resolutions. These are for the members. And they fall into two main categories based on the voting needed.
Okay.
First, an ordinary resolution. This just needs a simple majority, so more than 50% of the votes cast. Think routine matters, or things where the Act or articles say an ordinary resolution is enough. A key example in VC deals is authorizing the directors to actually allot the new shares under Section 551.
Simple majority. Okay. And the other type?
That's a special resolution. This needs a much higher level of support, not less than 75% of the votes cast. So a 3/4 majority.
Right, significantly higher.
Yes, and these are reserved for the big stuff. Fundamental changes to the company's constitution or shareholder rights. Things like amending the Articles of Association, changing the company name, or, crucially for VC, disapplying statutory preemption rights, which we'll come back to. That 75% threshold for special resolutions is a really important protection for minority shareholders. It stops a 51% majority just steamrolling through major changes. That might be a key point of difference to know.
Very clear. Voting thresholds are key. But you mentioned flexibility for private companies earlier. There's a shortcut for shareholder decisions too, isn't there? Avoiding meetings?
Yes, the written resolution mechanism for private companies. Sections 288 to 300 of the Act cover this. It's incredibly useful. Most shareholder decisions, both ordinary and special, can be passed this way. You just circulate the proposed resolution to the eligible shareholders.
Without needing a physical meeting.
Exactly. Saves a lot of time and hassle. There are a couple of exceptions. You can't use it to remove a director or an auditor before their term is up. But for most things in a VC deal, it works. The procedure involves circulating it, usually by the directors. It needs to go to all members entitled to vote. There's a set time frame, a lapse date, usually 28 days unless the articles say otherwise, by which they need to respond.
And when does it pass?
This is key. It passes as soon as the required majority signifies agreement. So for an ordinary resolution, the moment you get back agreements totaling over 50%. For a special resolution, the moment you hit that 75% mark. It doesn't wait for the lapse date.
Interesting. So it can be very quick.
Very quick. And a special written resolution must clearly state it is a special resolution. That's a specific requirement.
So efficiency is great, but that speed could be a double-edged sword for minorities.
Potentially, yes. If there isn't strong alignment, a majority could push something through very quickly via written resolution. That's precisely why minority investors often negotiate specific protections into the articles, or a shareholders agreement like higher consent thresholds for certain actions, or requiring their specific director's approval to counteract that statutory speed.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's get really practical now. Imagine our Luxembourg fund is investing in a UK startup. What are the absolute core must-have resolutions needed to make that deal happen? Let's use the 5 W's and H framework you mentioned.
All right, let's break it down. There's a fairly standard set. First action, approving the investment agreement and ancillary docs. What is it? It's the company formally approving the main deal documents. The subscription agreement, the shareholders agreement, maybe others. Who approves? Primarily the board of directors. Why? To legally bind the company to the terms the investors have negotiated. How? By a board resolution, either at a meeting or unanimous written one. This is where directors demonstrate they've met their duties, particularly Section 172, promoting success. The resolution must be precise, identifying the exact documents when. Usually an early formal step by the company's board. Filing. Generally, these board resolutions are internal records only, not filed publicly.
Okay, step 1, board approves the deal docs. What's next?
Next action, authorizing the allotment of shares. What? This gives the directors the legal power to issue the new shares to the investors. Who gives this power? The shareholders grant this authority to the directors. Why? Because under Section 551 of the Companies Act, directors generally need shareholder permission to allot shares. Section 550, automatic authority, usually doesn't apply in typical VC structures with multiple share classes.
Okay, so they can't just issue shares on their own.
Not usually, no. How? This requires an ordinary resolution, that simple majority. The resolution must state the maximum nominal amount of shares covered and have an expiry date, which could be up to 5 years. When? Critically, this authority must be in place before the directors actually allot the shares at completion. Filing. Okay, this is important. After the allotment happens, the company files a Form SH01, a return of allotment, with Companies House. That has to be done within 1 month of the allotment.
Got it. Authority first from shareholders, then board allots, then file the SH01. What's the third key one?
Action. Disapplying statutory preemption rights. What is this? The Companies Act, Section 561, gives existing shareholders a default right preemption to be offered new equity shares issued for cash pro rata to their holding. This resolution switches that right off. Who decides? The shareholders. Why? Because in a typical VC round, you want the new investors to subscribe directly for their shares. You don't want existing shareholders having the right to take up those shares instead.
Right, that will block the new investment.
Exactly.
Okay.
How? This needs a special resolution, so 75% majority. Sections 569 to 571 cover this. And interestingly, if it's disapplication for a specific allotment, like in a funding round, Section 571 requires the directors to provide a written statement to shareholders explaining why they recommend disapplying the rights, the amount involved, and justifying the price.
A bit more transparency there.
Yes. When? This must be passed before allotting the shares, if they are equity shares being issued for cash and not strictly pro rata. Filing. Yes, a copy of the special resolution itself must be filed at Companies House within 15 days of it being passed.
Okay, that's critical for letting the new money in. What else?
Number 4, usually happening right at completion. Action. Adopting new articles of association. Replacing the company's current constitution with a brand new set, tailored for a VC-backed company. These will contain all the investor rights, liquidation preferences, anti-dilution, board appointment rights, consent matters, the works, often based on models like the BVCA ones. Who approves? The shareholders. Why? Because the company's existing articles are almost certainly unsuitable. The new articles are essential to legally embed the governance and control framework agreed in the deal. How? Again, it's a special resolution under Section 21 of the Act. The resolution should explicitly repeal the old articles and adopt the new ones, making sure the new set is clearly identified. When? A core completion step. The new governance regime needs to kick in immediately post-investment. Filing. 2 filings needed here. A copy of the special resolution within 15 days. And crucially, a copy of the new articles themselves must also be filed within 15 days of them taking effect.
Right, makes sense. New rules for the newly funded company. Is there a fifth common one?
Sometimes, yes. Action. Changing the company name. What? Formally changing the registered name. Who? Shareholders approve this? Why? Could be rebranding, investor preference, maybe the old name wasn't quite right. How? By special resolution, Section 78. When? Often done as part of the completion process. Filing. Yes, you file a specific form, NM01, plus the special resolution copy with Companies House. There's a small fee, about £20 digitally, I think.
Oh.
And importantly, the name change is only legally effective once Companies House issues the new certificate.
Okay, that's a great breakdown of the core what. Now let's talk a bit more about how the actual drafting, the procedures, and how this all fits into the deal flow. Drafting sounds like it needs real precision.
Oh, absolutely. Drafting is critical. Resolutions aren't just placeholders. They need to be crystal clear about what's being approved and under what authority, linking back to that director duty in Section 171, acting within powers. You need precise wording for statutory compliance. For example, making sure a special resolution explicitly says special resolution, or including the maximum amount and expiry date for an allotment authority under Section 551. They must reference the specific final versions of the deal documents. Often useful to include wording around conditionality, too. The resolution only takes effect upon completion.
Practicalities.
Exactly. And maybe sweeper clauses in board resolutions, giving directors authority to do minor related things needed to implement the main decision. And remember, these resolutions are operating on and approving the whole suite of ancillary documents. The subscription agreement, the shareholders agreement, the new articles, often a disclosure letter where founders give warranties, maybe new director service agreements. The resolutions tie it all together legally for the company.
So the detail really matters to make sure the whole package holds together legally. What about getting them formally passed? The procedures.
Procedural compliance. Non-negotiable in the UK. For board meetings, you absolutely have to follow the rules in the company's articles, notice periods, quorum requirements, and as we said, minuting is vital, Section 248.
And for shareholders?
For shareholder meetings, general meetings or GMs, there are strict statutory notice rules. For private companies, the default is 14 clear days notice under Section 307. Clear days means you exclude the day you send the notice and the day of the meeting itself. So it's often actually 16 days or more in practice, depending on how notice is given.
Right, the calculation matters.
It does. And the notice content must be specific, particularly for special resolutions. Section 283 requires the notice to include the full text of the special resolution and state the intention to propose it as a special resolution. And for written resolutions, the procedure in sections 288 to 300 must be followed carefully, circulation to the right people, stating the lapse date, section 297, how members signify agreement, section 296. Getting the process right is just as important as the words in the resolution.
So getting the procedure right is as important as the drafting, really. Messing up the process could invalidate the whole thing.
Absolutely. It underpins the legal validity of the decision. Get the procedure wrong, and the resolution could potentially be challenged. Then, after approval, record keeping is key. We mentioned board minutes, but also shareholder resolution records must be kept, usually for 10 years minimum. These minutes are legally significant. They're considered prima facie evidence of the proceedings.
Okay.
And you also need to update the company's own internal statutory registers promptly. The Register of Members, Register of Directors, the PSE, Persons of Significant Control Register.
And then there's the public side, companies' house filings.
Yes, the public record. Several filings are mandatory and make information public. All special resolutions need filing within 15 days. The new articles within 15 days of taking effect. The SH-01 form for share allotments within 1 month. The NM-01 for a name change needs to go in promptly too.
And these become public documents.
Yes. Anyone can search the Companies House website and see these special resolutions and the company's articles. It means a fair bit of transparency about the company's structure and governance. Using the online web filing system is the standard, efficient way to do this.
Okay. What about the costs associated with all this?
Well, the Companies House filing fees themselves are pretty nominal, maybe £20 for a digital name change, things like that. The real cost is, frankly, the legal advice. Drafting these documents correctly, advising the board on their duties, managing the process that takes specialist time and expertise. But, the potential hidden cost of not doing it right, having to rectify things later, disputes, deals falling apart, they can be much, much higher.
Makes sense. And it all stems from the deal negotiation, right? How does that initial negotiation phase influence these resolutions?
The negotiation impact is enormous. The resolutions are fundamentally the legal machinery used to implement the commercial deal that's been hammered out. All those key terms, investor consent rights over certain company actions, who gets board seats, the exact mechanics of liquidation preferences or anti-dilution protection for the investor's shares, how preemption is handled, whether disapplied statutorily or managed contractually in the articles. All these things are negotiated first, and then they have to be precisely translated into the wording of the resolutions and, critically, embedded into the new Articles of Association. Making sure those documents perfectly mirror the commercial agreement is vital to avoid ambiguity in future disputes. And finally, timelines. It's really a sequence of events that needs careful management. You've got the pre-completion phase. Board approves the deal terms in principle, circulates the shareholder resolutions or meeting notice. Then the shareholder approval itself could be instant with written resolutions if everyone's on board, or it needs that 14+ day notice period for a GM. Then completion date, final board meeting to formally allot shares, execute the key documents, and then post-completion. Hitting those 15-day and 1-month filing deadlines, updating internal registers, issuing share certificates within 2 months. Managing these steps and deadlines is crucial for a smooth closing, especially when you're coordinating across borders.
Okay, that's a really comprehensive overview. So pulling it all together, what does this deep dive really mean for you, our listener, the professional in Luxembourg, working on these UK VC deals? What are the key takeaways?
I think the core message is that mastering UK corporate approvals really demands diligence. You need to understand those directors' duties. They're not optional extras. You need to know the difference between ordinary and special resolutions and how written resolutions work for private companies, including their speed. Be absolutely clear on that core set of resolutions for VC. Approving the deal docs, getting allotment authority, disapplying preemption, adopting new articles. Remember the need for really precise drafting and absolutely strict adherence to procedure notice periods, filing deadlines. And don't forget the record keeping and the company's house filings. And maybe points to particularly focus on, compared perhaps to a civil law system, are that flexibility and speed of written resolutions, the specific way duties are owed to the company in UK law, and the level of public transparency through companies' house filings.
So this deep dive gives you the map, definitely, but the terrain itself can still have some, tricky spots.
Indeed, it can. And where there is complexity or nuance or something unusual about the deal structure, getting specialist UK corporate legal advice is always, always the sensible route. Don't guess.
Absolutely. So after this deep dive into UK resolutions, what really stands out to you? What's a lingering thought?
It does raise an interesting point. We talked about the efficiency of written resolutions, how they pass immediately once the threshold is hit. It makes me wonder, how can minority investors in a UK private company truly ensure their rights and, perhaps more subtly, their considerations are fully taken into account, especially on really critical decisions, if they haven't proactively built very specific protections into the articles or the shareholders agreement, things like requiring more formal consultation or maybe even needing higher consent thresholds than the statutory 75% for certain key actions. Without those bespoke protections, that speed could potentially leave them behind, couldn't it? Something to think about.
A very pertinent question for investors and their advisors. Definitely food for thought. Okay, that's all we have time for on this deep dive. Hit that like and subscribe button if you found this useful. It was the Luxembourg Fundcast for you today. This podcast contains content generated or significantly edited using artificial intelligence tools. All information is provided for general informational purposes only and reflects knowledge available at the time of publication. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. We recommend that listeners verify the information independently and consult with qualified professionals for personalized advice.